All the Young Dudes by MsKingBean89. Chapter 27. Second Year. A Birthday Engagement. Friday, 3rd November 1972. Sirius's 13th birthday did not fall on the full moon, as his 12th had. He never told the others about the talking to he'd got from Remus. Not as far as Remus could tell, anyway. But he did act slightly different towards his friends. Whereas before, he had sometimes treated Remus as a bit of a pet project, amazed whenever Lupin exhibited an independent thought, Sirius at least appeared to develop some sensitivity towards the two secondary marauders. The subject of Quidditch was still a sore one, and so on the morning of the second Hogwarts birthday, James had enough tact not to suggest a lunchtime flying session. Breakfast began with a round of happy birthday at the very tops of their voices, as had become tradition for the marauders by now. The party sent Sirius a huge basket of chocolates, while James had ordered half of Zonko's catalogue as a birthday present. Remus was a bit embarrassed to hand over his own gifts, some old copies of Melody Maker and NME that he'd pinched over the summer, but Sirius was thrilled. One of them had an interview with Mark Bolin. They spent most of breakfast turning the pages, the three pure-blood wizards laughing at the static Muggle photographs. Remus kept sneaking looks at Sirius, wondering if he looked any different now he was a teenager. Remus had wanted to be 13 for ages. It seemed to him a very mature, grown sort of age. He knew it was silly to think that he could become imbued with some kind of new wisdom overnight, but it was certainly an important milestone, whichever way you looked at it. Sirius was definitely holding himself in a slightly different way. Remus was sure. Unfortunately, the carefree morning ended there. As they finished their meal and were preparing to get up for their first lesson, History of Magic, the passage out of the hall was blocked. "Sirius," a stern voice said. Narcissa Black stood before them. At 15, she was taller than all four marauders. She was a fairly attractive girl, Remus thought, if a little pinched about the face. She didn't have her elder sister's mad look, and she had dyed and straightened her long hair so that it hung in a gorgeous platinum sheet, which shimmered when it caught the light. She stood before them with her arms crossed, Regulus sulking at her side. "Sissy," Sirius nodded in greeting. She flinched, but didn't chastise him. "It's your birthday," she said. "Well, I was aware." She rolled her eyes. It seemed she didn't have her sister's temper either, which Remus was glad for. "You're to eat with us this evening. Come and sit at the Gryffindor table if you absolutely have to." "No," she narrowed her grey eyes. "Your mother has given strict instructions. We'll eat privately in the Slytherin common room like last year." "No!" Sirius lost his newfound maturity and suddenly seemed very much like a child, practically stamping his foot. "I want to eat with my friends." "You can eat with them any time you want," Narcissa snapped, her hands on her hips now. "Birthdays are family occasions." Regulus looked at his feet, still standing just behind his cousin. Sirius was still annoyed, but finally nodded in his assent. James placed a hand on his shoulder, a harmless gesture, but Regulus looked up and stared intently, as if they were doing something foul. Once a time had been set for dinner, the two Slytherin Blacks left, and the marauders stared after them. James looked at Sirius. "Bad luck," he commiserated. "Want to bunk off lessons?" "Nah," Sirius shook his head. "I'll just take a few dung bombs with me to dinner." "We can see if that time bomb spell works." "Perfect." Sirius was gone for a long while after dinner. James paced the dorm room, checking his watch every few minutes and wondering out loud whether he ought to go and stand outside the dungeons and shout. "We need to start working on your map again, Lupin," he said, running his hands through his already catastrophic hair. "Get everyone tagged, so we know where they are at all times." "We're a long way off that," Remus replied from his bed, where he was reading a book. "Still haven't mapped any of the Eastwind. I could do some over Christmas." "No." James stopped still in the middle of the room. "You and Black are coming to mine for Christmas." Remus stared at him and swallowed awkwardly. "James, I can't. You know I can't." James waved a hand, resuming his pacing. "I'll sort it all out with Dad, don't worry. Full moon's on the 20th, I checked. We can all hang out here and then leave on the 21st. Remus was speechless, but it didn't matter. James decided quickly after to don his cloak and go looking for Sirius. Peter, rather predictably, followed him, but Remus was enjoying his book and let them go. He lolled on the bed and thought about putting a record on. James and Peter had called for a ban on Bowie until the end of the year. But if they weren't in the room... At the beginning of the year, Remus had been so taken in by Sirius's excitement that he hadn't told them that he had in fact known all about Ziggy Stardust. In fact, everyone in the Muggle world, pretty much, had been talking about him all summer. Sometime in mid-July, Remus had sat in the rec room after tea with a few of the older boys to watch Top of the Pops. The TV was still black and white, but Remus felt as though he'd seen the performance in colour. David Bowie was like no one he'd ever seen before. All of them had sat staring with their mouths wide open as the slender, alien-looking man bobbed across the stage with a patchwork leotard. He was pale as snow, his hair was long at the back and stuck up widely on top. His eyes were resting, one pupil larger than the other. He was wearing makeup. Remus had at once wanted to know him, and to be him. When David slung his arm around the tall, fair-haired guitarist, Remus's stomach had done an odd sort of flip, and as the two men sang into the same microphone, their cheeks pressed close together. One of the St. Edmund's care workers had marched over and turned off the television set. "Nasty quiz," he had said. "Disgusting putting that sort of thing on the telly when kiddies might see it." Remus thought about it more than he wanted to. When the two other boys returned, it was with a white-faced Sirius. He looked worse than he usually did after an encounter with his family, closed off and utterly joyless. Even his eyes looked a little less bright, veering into grey. "What's up?" Remus stood up, concerned. "It's terrible," Sirius said. "Really, really terrible. Vile. The worst. Most unthinkable. Horrific." He threw himself onto his bed, face down. "He's been like this since we found him in the dungeons," James explained. "Nothing but adjectives." "Superlative adjectives," Sirius corrected, muffled slightly by his pillow. Yeah, you're being dramatic," James sighed. He ran his fingers through his hair again. He'd be bald before he saw 30, Remus thought. "Want to tell us why?" Sirius rolled onto his back, staring up at the canopy of his bed. "I'm getting married." "What?" James and Peter looked just as shocked as Remus, so at least he knew it wasn't a normal wizard thing. "Narcissa told me," he nodded, still staring blankly upwards. "Usually they wouldn't make a match until I was of age, like with Bellatrix, but Sissy says they decided to tighten the reins in my case." "Make a match?" James sounded flabbergasted. "The Blacks don't still have arranged marriages, surely?" "Of course we do," Sirius heaved a sigh. "Noble and most ancient, etc., etc. They want to hold the betrothal ceremony next summer. I'm supposed to book my ideas up in time for it. Then the wedding is happening as soon as I finish Hogwarts. Doubt you lot will be invited." "That's mad! That's medieval! That's—" "My mother," Sirius finished. Remus felt rude interrupting, but his curiosity was getting the better of him. "Who are you supposed to be marrying?" Sirius sat up. "That's the twist in the dragon's tail, isn't it?" he said angrily. "That's my mother's piece de resistance." He pronounced the French beautifully, with a perfect accent. Even in his darkest rages, Sirius Black could enunciate. "Ooh, Sissy." "What? Narcissa? Your cousin? Narcissa Black?" Sirius nodded. His shoulders sagged. The closed-off look returned to his face, then he lay back down. "Apparently they're looking to rein her in too. Andromeda, her sister, you know, the only normal one. She's pregnant, according to Sissy. They're closing ranks, trying to prevent any more dirty blood from getting in." "But there have to be other pure-blood girls out there," James reasoned. "And I thought she and that Malfoy creep were going out." "They are," Sirius nodded. "She's as pissed off about it as I am, believe me. Talk about wedded bliss." "What about Regulus?" James was asking. He looked as though his mind was working a mile a minute. "What about him?" Sirius said, bitterly. "Think he fancies her instead?" "She's quite pretty," Peter said, meekly. Sirius gave him a look that could shatter glass. "She's my cousin, you dolt." "All right," James held up an authoritative hand. No need for name-calling. We're just trying to help. Remus couldn't see how exactly Peter was helping, but he bit his tongue and let James continue. I meant, did Regulus say anything? He was there, wasn't he? Not a word, Sirius glowered, and no one mentioned his brother again. Right, well, James pushed his glasses up onto his nose. We've got until next summer, and we've got Narcissa on our side, believe it or not. So, I'd say it's not hopeless. You don't know what hopeless is until you've met my mother, Sirius said. And she doesn't know what a marauder is, James said, firmly. Gentlemen, he looked at them each, in turn. Remus could see exactly what was coming. We have a new mission.